Hi everyone, I'm Sloan from SloanBella.com and I am back with another celebrity channeled video. Now this one caught me completely off guard because this man's name was not on anybody's bingo card. Nobody's ever asked me to do a video about him, and I think he was probably pretty much out of sight, out of mind. Simply put, he was at an age in his life where he was just living his life the way that he wanted to live his life, not the way we wanted him to live it anymore. And I'm talking about the late actor Gene Hackman, along with his wife Betsy, who were found deceased in their New Mexico home. Immediately when this hit the internet, I heard the words, "It has to do with his property. It has to do with his property." So other than it being in New Mexico, I had no idea that his property was in such close proximity to the Epstein property in New Mexico. So that adds another spin onto this. However, I've got to start from the beginning when I pick up information. And as I said, I heard the words, "It has to do with his property." So I pulled up the chart online to see if I could find anything. And I did find Gene's chart. I did not find his wife's Betsy's chart. There doesn't appear to be one online. However, she was a December 15th of 1959. Now, Gene was a January 30th, 1930. And that too is not something I say very often on this channel because that's a very aged person, 95 years old at the time that he passed. So it's not necessarily a surprise that he passed because he's 95. So it's like your great-grandfather's age. We don't expect people to live much past that. However, the level of chaos and commitment to changing the story that the media had was completely suspect. Because remember, in any scenario, the truth is not a lie. The truth is not chaos. The truth is not confusing. This was so confusing. I was like, what is going on? So Gene's chart is, as I said, January 30th, 1930, 7:45 a.m. in San Bernardino, California. He's a good old California boy. Triple Aquarius. That is odd in and of itself. Now, the energy of Aquarius vibrates from a very intellectual, detached mannerism. So I call, a predominance of Aquarius in somebody's chart a computer brain because it's so analytical that it misses the emotional mark in a lot of its conversations, connections, communication. So when you're looking at this, you're looking at it going, okay, so he's a little bit of up in his head, an avoidant type personality. But he's not, because the ascendant was 2720 Aquarius with Pisces in the first house. So that's the first etheric kind of energy, or we'll call it spiritual intuitive side, where he could pick up on your emotions, pick up on what you had to say, understand the context underneath what you're saying, read between the lines, very good judge of character. So the moon in Aquarius, the sun in Aquarius, and Venus in Aquarius, a stellium in the sign of Aquarius, in the 12th house, very difficult, psychic also, with moon conjuncting the ascendant, very intuitive and very emotional to the point of avoidance. Not avoidance because he's an Aquarius, avoidance because he's too emotional and has to pull away from the intimacy of the emotion, making him a very good actor, actually, because he can step into a character and then push that character aside and then let go of it, which is great that he doesn't walk around in character all the time. There are some actors that are literally their own character, if you will. So he's able to do that. But the emotional context of how he thinks comes from an internal intuitive level. Then we have his Mars and his Mercury conjunct coming in the 12th house in the sign of Capricorn. So this is a really businesslike, perfunctory, logical mindset, but it's also in opposite, this is horrific, in opposition to Pluto in Cancer. In opposition to Pluto in Cancer. That is a binding, controlling, manipulative, against him type of energy. And since it's placed in the 12th house, and all of his male and female energies in the chart are in the 12th house, and because that Pluto's in Cancer, this is family members popping out from the 12th house, pretending to be kind and loving and caring. And of course, they're manipulative, and it's a battle of wills or control. That is also one thing. Not to mention, Mercury is retrograde. Now, I personally like that aspect in a chart because it focuses the overly materialistic mind into spiritual thinking. So in this lifetime, you have to think from the perspective of soul and spirit, because in a most recent past lifetime, you did not, and you overlooked the meaning of life by focusing only in one direction and not a spiritual direction, presumably. So we have Mercury in Capricorn. We have it opposing Pluto. So who is in a battle of wills trying to get Gene to think in a different way against his way of thinking? Is he thinking spiritually? Is he thinking materialistically? We don't know. Then you look at his ruling planet, triple Aquarius. What rules Aquarius? You know what rules it? Uranus. And Uranus is placed on the second house cusp. So this man is trend-setting career-wise. He is doing things differently. He is unusual. We can't control him. He's erratic. We don't know what he's doing. His money comes from here. His money comes from there. We don't really know everything or everywhere that he thinks on a foundational level, either financially or how he expresses himself. It's so different. So that Uranus on the second house, he could have had an interest in astrology as well, just so you know. And Uranus on the second house is interesting because it will guide people, and I'm going to say this and then throw this out in left field, it will guide people into professions morally because they are not emotionally attached. So in other words, if it's against my heart or morality to hunt, say, I'm just using that as an example, then I'm going to have a very hard time being a butcher and hunting and doing that kind of thing, right? Because it's not in keeping with me. When Uranus is on the second house cusp, which is basically the foundation of life and how it was handed to you through your parental structure, and also basically your moral compass, when Uranus is placed there, this gives you a little bit of freak in the way that you think. So you can do businesses that are completely out of the norm, like be an astronaut, or you can, for example, acquire income by overlooking the moral or the morality towards that particular income. So you see, it's a double-edged sword. So when we're looking at this energy, I can see where he could go one of two ways in his life. Now, going back to the way that I feel psychically, okay, with him on an energetic level, I feel from a past life to this life to the life he was living. Sounds weird, but I'm seeing timelines collide with him. So immediately I pop into hearing the information on the internet. Immediately I know it has to do with the house. So on the day that they reported this, I can tell you, people had already been in and out of his house. Well, that's obvious because they would report it after, but I'm talking before it was reported, before the 911 call. And this was not two people that were locked in their house for no reason. And then suddenly, you know, someone goes to check on them and it's like, oh my God, they've been dead. No, there were people there and they were cleaning up the property. The first thing I get is that Gene was unaware that his property was being used for what it was being used for. And I'll just say the words import and export business. Trafficking of something. Drugs, people, animals, cars, parts, whatever. Insert your own idea. But he was unaware of the back of the property. So if I walk in the front of his house and I have no idea what it looks like, and I go straight to the back right corner and I look out and I go to the end of the property line, I know they had several acres. So go to the end of the property line. That is where the problem is. And that is what he disagreed with. Before he passed, October of this past year, 2024, I see his wife, Betsy, who was his ultimate caretaker and protector. I see Betsy also a monitoring spirit. And I don't mean in the handler type way, like on Earth we say, oh, they're a handler, they're handling their celebrity. No, I don't mean that. I literally mean, and I'm not sure if she was born in a military family, but I mean she was groomed early on in life to caretake this man, to fall in love with him, to be there for him energetically, to basically monitor. I'm talking only spiritually here. I don't think that you have to be conscious of that, but that was her focus. And I'm not sure if she was monitoring him to have stuff not work in the right way, as in he's not able to express his soul path, or was she monitoring to protect him from blowing it again? Because he blew it in the last lifetime. I'm sure we all do. I'm terrified. I'm terrified about when you cross over and they're like, you did it again. And then you're like chained and bound into another 10 lifetimes. Horrifying. But I'm sure we've all done it. With him in particular, his life was squashed in the most recent past life. He was bound and was bound spiritually. So this I don't really understand, but the soul came right back into the position, the appearance, the position, and the parents from the binding in the past life into this life. His life, he couldn't have been anything else but who he was. He could try all he wanted. He could do whatever he wanted. This was a mirror image of the most recent past life, and his inability to climb out of the bondage energy-wise and achieve his soul growth, I guess, or the path. So this was a binding. So no one knows this when they're born. Like, you may feel it. You may feel you struggle, but none of us, there's a few, I would say none. There's a few that can kind of recognize where they come from, but mostly our memory energy is wiped. So I see him coming into this lifetime. I go through the strand of timeline that is this life and see that it forked. So it cut into a third timeline. So usually when they say you're on a timeline, it's like, oh, we're living this timeline, like the 1940s. So that's our timeline. This is what we do. Everybody in the 40s does this. Not so. He came from a timeline before 1930 and it imprinted into this life onto him. So we have the new strand of energy known as Gene's life timeline in this life with the overlay of that life and the binding. So he must have suffered from depression. I've never heard that. I'm just saying that because I can feel it. So there's the permeation of being bound, knowledge of that internally. Then there's this life, and when he's about 38, I see the timeline splitting wide open, as in right side, left side. And I'm seeing him go down the middle. Very interesting. I walk a tightrope. I walk between two worlds. That way that I can still do what I want to do, but I'm not doing what they want me to do. I walk between two worlds. Seriously. This is an energy thing, an undercurrent. So we have this man who I feel was under duress due to the fact that he was being threatened. Thug life. Think of thug life. Think of the back in the day, the mafia. They come to your business, knock, knock, knock. You owe us protection money, and you're sitting there going, "I'm just making spaghetti dinners. What, why, right?" Well, because this is our neighborhood, we're going to collect money from you. Whoever this group of thugs is. So just a gang of people invested in controlling what Gene had, the property. He put a fuss up because I think at this point in his life, he's like, I don't care. His wife had communication in October of 2024 with somebody who looks like CIA, FBI, a cop, a military, glasses on, black suit, knock, knock, knock on the door. I feel like Betsy made an outside arrangement to give information to this organization, the representative that looks like FBI, CIA, Men in Black, put it however you want, she's talking to them in order to keep her and Jean safe. So there's this real investigation going on over here. They might even be wearing wires. They might even be wearing wires. Now, this is before Christmas. And I feel like Jean does not know what Betsy's talking about with this person over here. So it's like there's a split down the middle of the room, and Jean lives here and Betsy lives here. I feel like there was an arrangement made where Betsy is like, I got to get us out of here. We got to go somewhere. We got to whatever. So in order to go somewhere, we have to be dead in order to go there, because otherwise they'll keep finding us, because it's kind of obvious to find us. It's not like their name is Joe Blow and no one knows who the hell they are, right? So she's making this arrangement. I feel like her death was staged prior to her dying. I don't feel the rat virus had anything to do with it. I'm not buying that. I'm sorry. I'm just not. But I do feel that her death was pre-planned and then planned against her knowledge. So there was a fake death, and then we're going to plan this death. I'm not planning it. Someone's doing this to me. Okay. So it's like this and then like this. So it's set out to be a way to save them, a way to help them, however, whatever way you want to perceive that. And then it turned into, I'm literally dead. I can't fucking believe it. I see somebody tossing something at the dog, and the little dog that died is the one that ate it, because that was the yappy dog, ate something. You know how when your dog is sick, or at least when mine were sick, and I'd try to put the medicine the vet gave in the food bowl, and they would like, of course they found it and they like tossed it out. So I would always wrap it in a piece of cheese. I'm seeing like a piece of hot dog and there's something in it. And immediately I flash over to Jean, and Jean is drinking a protein shake, and he has headaches and he doesn't think right with his protein shakes. He also has an aneurysm in his head and his heart doesn't work right. But that's not the real issue. He is 95. He was going to die soon, sooner than later. However, if I have a protein drink, and every time the doctor asks me what year it is doing the elderly test for dementia, and I'm like, I'm so fucked up, I don't know the year, 1950, I don't know, I can't think. I just drank this protein drink. What is in it? I feel it was either the medicine Jean was on, like whatever the doctor gave him, and it was clouding his brain, or literally the protein shake was being spiked with something. I am seeing this, okay? So it's kind of interesting. Now, what I can see also is that prior to them being discovered, so before they were discovered, there were people all over that property. And then I find out he has an island. Who does that sound like? Yeah. Anyway, all these celebrities and their islands. Like, we have islands. What you doing on the islands? Well, it's not necessarily what he's doing on the island. It's what his island is being used for and why it was bought under his name to avoid being found out. So if I have like a red letter on my forehead because I'm a criminal, I get my friend, acquaintance, or I blackmail somebody, or I bully them, and I give them the money to buy the island. They buy the island, known as Fawn Island, and then it's under my name. No one checks it because I'm freaking Gene Hackman and I'm not doing anything there. But who is doing something there? That's why I got property. Somebody is doing something there that I feel that Gene Hackman and his wife were not in agreement with. And I feel like that's actually the reason they passed in the manner they did. Always keep in mind, when it's more chaos than not, it's not truthful. So my energy is really elevated around this. And I want to also point out that the reason his children are not in the will, which everybody's like, oh my God, what a prick, he didn't leave his children in the will. First of all, no one's entitled to anything. However, having said that, the money was tainted is what I'm hearing. And if the children were immediate heirs to that money, then bad fortune would come on them. So it went to his wife, Betsy, assuming, like any actuary would tell you, like he's 30 years older, he's probably going to die first. In a weird turn of fate, he died second. So the will would resort back to him. Betsy left it to charity, which is, just think about that for a second. Why would anybody leave anything to a charity? So we need to check into the charity, who owns the charity, who sits on the board of the charity, etc., and who holds the finance company or the holding company for the charity to hide the distribution of the money outside of where it's presented. So you see, so this is the money that you put over here to keep your life going. That's why it's in the will. Now, Jean outlived her, according to the reports, right? He died after her. So the money was then left to a lawyer, because that makes sense. And where is that lawyer giving the money? How's he distributing? Unfortunately, the lawyer died, and then it's left to a third party person. And I don't know if she was an agent, but she was something like an agent, a lawyer. Don't quote me on that. I do feel the kids are going to fight for the will in probate. I would too. But I feel the reason the money wasn't left was because of the energy attached to the money and how he felt it would have hurt his children. So I feel like, for whatever reason, he did not want this to hurt his children. So as a result of that, he chose to do something different with the money and put it through the pipeline of, I have to pay you back because this is tainted money. This is tainted money. It's tainted. And I'm telling you, not all his money was tainted. It's the gang that came in and said, we need to run this money through your stuff so that we can do this. And the decision to do that was back when he was 38, okay? Around the age of 38. I don't feel he's one of these people we've been talking about on the news. I don't feel that at all. In fact, that's not the case. The case is he was being used, the property was being used, the experience was being used. This was the problem. Everything was being used that he had accumulated, and as a result of it, there was conflict. And I feel like Jean was like, I'm not doing this. And I never agreed to do this. And so just no. And I feel like his wife was working with the feds, some level of Fed, I don't know which level, of feds over here to capture this over here. And that's what led to the early passing. I don't feel for 1 second, and this is just my psychic opinion, but I don't feel for one reason. I can hear when you talk. It doesn't sound right. Okay? I don't even feel like his wife, Betsy, died when they said she died. I don't feel like that. I don't know when she died, but the public statement of her death is not when she died. That's not true. And I'm seeing people swarm around his house before 911 is called. The doors are open. The windows are open. They're looking for something. People are going through stuff. That's why the dog is locked wherever he was locked. Okay? That's why he was given the little hot dog with the poison in it, because they had to stop him. That dog came out of left field. So it was very interesting. It's a setup to look a particular way in order to get Betsy and Jean out of the area, but then it really happened. So we're making believe over here, and it's going to look like this. Stop, it really happens. And now we are really deceased. We are not pretend deceased. Also, the property. I really hope someone's out there looking at the property. It 100% has to do with the property that he has and what went on. I feel they used, and it's a 3-day time period that I'm picking up, but I feel they used a 3-day time period to fill up holes, to dig out holes, to get rid of stuff, to remove stuff, to take stuff. I feel like they had the whole property monitored. Remember back in the day before I keep saying weed, aging myself, before weed was legal, and these people would have like 50 acres, and then people be like doing pot farms in the back of random people's property. Something like this was going on with their property. I heard it's the property. This is about the property and the import export of whatever product is going in and out and under this property. Also, think about the island, the Fawn Island. What happens there? Is this like a hunting island? And what are we hunting? Bambi? And what is another word for Bambi? Little kids, little babies. What are we hunting? What are we doing? What are we doing really? So there's several different ways, but it's a form of extortion, and not necessarily because these two people were bad. Although I do feel Betsy is a monitoring spirit on a metaphysical level. I feel like she spent her time and her husband was her target. So it's like, I see you, you're my target, and then I can stop you from progressing on a soul level. But he beat that because he outlived her. So whatever he was doing in those last days, he was not as confused as they say. That is just not true. He literally was not as confused as they say. And since about 2008, I feel he'd been coming under attack by these people, the same people we're talking about, in order to rough him up, in order to make him do something. Just like they accost a little kid on the way to school and they're like, you're going to sell drugs. And the little kid's like, I'm not going to do it. And they're like, you are, we're going to kill your family. It's exactly like that. I see it going back to like little thugs on the school ground doing this for the pimps that wait outside the school for them. Exactly like this. Okay, that's the way that I see it. This is my first video on Gene Hackman and his wife, Betsy. And once again, my name is Sloan from SloanBella.com.